Hi, this is Cheryl back with you from Farmhouse Frugally. If you are new to my channel, here I like to make a lot of different craft items. And occasionally, when I have an opportunity to do some furniture flips, we have a phenomenal dump where I live where you can take or leave whatever you want from the good table. So I take a lot of those items meant for the landfill and turn them from trash into treasure. And today, I went to the dump with my husband and found this beautiful plaster frame, two incredibly dirty stools that will need some love before they are going to even come into my home, this sweet little reindeer, which I will do something with probably at Christmas. My husband found these two wooden stools. They're small, but they are very practical. I'm sure I can come up with an idea. An antique medicine chest, also rather dirty. This sweet picture with a pretty silver frame that I simply cleaned and hung right up in my bedroom. I have a whole wall of pictures, and I thought the color and the style was going to match beautifully. A little tiny white ramekin and a small clock that actually works with a horse. Now today I'm going to do 5 trash to treasures for you. And project number 1, you may remember in my last video that I took a lot of tins and bottles and boxes and turned trash into treasure. And I really wanted to do something with this vignette, but I lost most of the footage, unfortunately. I just started with a Dollar Tree canvas and I added some tissue paper that has music on the background and layered pictures over it with decoupage until I got the look that I was going for. A beautiful fairy and a few birds and birds' nests and things that I got on Graphics Fairy. And so then here I am just taking some antiquing wax once that is dry and going around the canvas edges especially. The canvas is a little bit white, and I am really hoping to make this match that vignette a little bit better and make it look a little bit more vintage. And I like that deeper distressing than some people, so you'll oftentimes see me use that antiquing wax straight out of the bottle. But if you do not like it that dark, you can certainly use clear wax first, or you can use clear wax over it to remove some. I recommend using clear wax first. I think it is easier to handle distressing it without putting the dark wax on, because sometimes if you put the dark wax on and you want to take some off, it is a little bit harder to take off than it is to add on. But I did want this to be fairly dark. Also, you can use this wax with a warm water. It kind of melts it almost a little bit into like I use a canning jar or glass jar, and then use it as a stain. So that works good if you are using it on wood. And you can use it on other things too. You can even put it on fabric, but it works kind of like a stain. So, but here really I just wanted to get that a nice dark edge all around the frame, almost making the frame look like wood from a distance, and then matching the antique vintagey feel of the vignette with this picture to pull the whole thing together. I'm going to be putting this vignette in my bedroom, and so I wanted just one more item to pull that together, and I didn't have a chance to do that in last week's video. So here I'm really just finishing it. I added a bow or a little ribbon here with a gold heart that I had from an old piece of jewelry, and I think this is just the perfect piece to complete the look that I was going for. And I will try to remember to link last week's video in the description box. I think this is a timeless look. I think this is a look that many people really like. I had a lot of wonderful comments from all of you in last week's video how much you did enjoy it. So I appreciate all of those wonderful comments, and I hope that you are subscribed. I have a lot coming up. So the other thing that I am doing here is in project number 2, doing another canvas from the dollar store. Not as elaborate, but just to give you an idea, since I had lost the footage on this one somewhat of how I've got this beginning part of this piece together. I'm doing something altogether different in project number 2, but at least it starts similarly. I am using the Dollar Tree canvas and another print and a little bird's nest that I had on hand. So just the Dollar Tree has a number of different sized canvases. I believe this is a 6x8 if I had to guess. Now this one I'm using different. Instead of decoupaging directly on the canvas front as I did with the first one, I am removing very gently the canvas because I want to use it on the other side. I want the canvas to have the frame in front of it. So I cut it off with my X-Acto knife, flipped the good part of the canvas so that I could use that, and then just took my staple gun and just firmly pulled the canvas so that I could get that stapled on. And then taking my X-Acto knife, I am just trimming that up so that when you look at it, you can see the edges of the frame and not the excess canvas. I am starting by taking another printable that I had gotten for free online. And you can go to Graphics Fairy, Pixabay, any number of just Google it. And then here I am just ripping the edges. I had printed this on rice paper. I like to use the rice paper. Leaves less wrinkles. It's a little bit thicker. It's easier to work with. In here I'm just taking the Mod Podge and a brush and just brushing the back of the rice paper with that so I can get that pretty good and covered, because I don't want to decoupage over the top of this print. Sometimes I'll do both the bottom and the top, but in this case I just wanted it on the bottom to adhere more like a glue. You could use probably a glue stick or even some paper glue here, but since I had the Mod Podge out, I just did Mod Podge that right directly to the canvas, smooth that out, and then I decided here that I did want to paint my frame. So I took out my latex wall color that is muslin wrap, the HGTV paint that I get oftentimes at Home Depot. I love this color and it matches my living room walls, and it's nice to have a standard color that you use in your home, and that way if you know what color that is, then whatever you paint will always match your decor. Sometimes I sell these items. A lot of you have asked me that question. I sell large pieces at a local consignment shop and occasionally on Craigslist. I'm just personally not a fan of Facebook, so I do not use Facebook. I mean, if somebody's interested and would like to, I'm more than happy to. It's just that I hate to charge people for shipping, and shipping is just so expensive these days. But if you see something you really like, let me know. Now, after that paint is dry on the frame, I decided again that I wanted this to match a little vignette that I had in my home. Also to show the difference between the decoupage piece and where the canvas meets, getting that to look more antique-y. And also because there's a fair amount of brown in the nest of this print that I printed, and I wanted to match some of that brown color into this, instead of painting the frame brown. I just wanted to kind of just antique it a little bit and antique the canvas together. And I do go over the entire thing just a little bit with what was left on my rag, just to get that a little bit, pull that all the way through. Now I had a little nest left in my stash, and I wanted to glue that into the corner. And you can make a nest, if you don't have something like this, out of maybe some sticks in your yard and some Spanish moss, or just out of Spanish moss, or maybe some Spanish and reindeer moss mixed. But you could certainly make your own nest. But I just took my hot glue gun, I did the corners of it, and then just pressing down for a couple of minutes just to make sure that is in there really nice and firmly, so that it is not going to fall off. If I had used 2 frames, that would have built this out just a little bit more, and that would be a good idea to do if you wanted to reproduce this, maybe to just put the wooden frame over this one and build that up a little more. So here I am taking some Spanish moss and just adding it to the inside of this nest. This is really just made out of twigs, this nest, so I wanted to give that a little bit more of the Spanish moss in the bottom. And then I have a couple pieces of reindeer moss. You can get either of these at the dollar store, Michael's, and other craft stores as well, but you know, it's a pretty decent amount for $1 at the dollar store, so that's generally where I pick this up. And I think the quality of their reindeer moss is really good. I have never gotten one that I have not been happy with. I've heard other people say but that they haven't been, but I really love the Spanish moss. So mixing those two in, getting a little bit of glue in there, pressing that down in there, and getting that a nice little nest. And then I had a few little eggs left over from some Easter projects that I had done. So I took 3, and they're in a similar color to the frame. So I glued them right in there on the bottom to keep them so they will not fall out. And that is pretty much all there was to this craft. And once that was in there, I just went ahead and set that up. So it's not the same way that I had done the fairy picture. That one was really layered decoupage, but it was similar in design. So I hope that this is something that you like. I had seen a couple of these on Pinterest with the little nest in the corner. Oh, I did forget that I added a hang tag. You may remember a couple of weeks ago I had printed a number of free printables. If you go on to Google and put in free tag graphics, I believe, free tag graphics spring, or free tag graphics birds, or fairies, whatever it is you're looking for, and you will get a number of these tags, and you can print them on cardstock, or you can put them on rice paper. You can print them on rice paper and then decoupage them onto the cardstock, you know, whatever look that you're going for. But I thought it was sweet. I'd used one of them, added a little bit of ribbon in the corner to give that a little bit more balance. Since I had that nest on one corner, I wanted to add this to the other corner. I also thought the bluebird pulled out the blue in the eggs. And so I am glad to finally have this one in my home for the spring. And I think it came out really sweet. You may remember the other things in this vignette that I had done in earlier videos. And then that takes me on to project number 3. Now, project number 3 and 4, I am using these spools that my husband got, and they were mimicking a wire spool. I had a large wire spool that I had made something out of a couple of months ago, but these are rather small. I would say 8 or 10 inches around for one of them and maybe a little larger for the other one. So you do have to use a star-shaped screwdriver to get these metal rods out, separating the wood from the cardboard. I just tossed the cardboard from the center, but you probably could come up with something. And then sanded them, get the splinters out, and then washed them to make sure that they were clean to start. And then once it was dry, I had this Paris clock from an IOD transfer that I have been wanting to use for a while now, and I didn't have quite the right size. It just so happened that this was perfect. And I knew with those 2 large holes, I'd have to get a little creative. One of the numbers on the clock was not going to be perfect, but that's okay. Here I'm making sure I line up that center hole so that the rest of it will be sure to be straight. And you could really do a number of things with this. You could add a battery clock mechanism to the back of this and put some hands on it and actually make a clock out of it. You could put feet on the bottom of this and make it into a riser. You could just put a zigzag hanging, picture hanger thingy on the back so that you can hang it on the wall. So here I am just taking the plastic once I got the transfer onto the wood. It transfers fairly easy on raw wood, and it looks, really awesome already. I think it really looks great. Fits perfect. And then I wanted to take some Minwax, a polyacrylic, and go over that. You could wax it, but since I was it's pretty dry, this wood, I wanted to make sure that it got a pretty good coat or two. I think I ended up doing 2 coats of the polyacrylic. If you really wanted this to be nice and smooth, you could sand in between and then on top of the final coat of poly. In this case, this wasn't something that I felt had to be super duper, smooth. So I just gave that 2 coats, one in between. Polyacrylic dries, I would say, in 15-20 minutes, very quickly. So it's one reason why I like to use it. And I don't find that it has much of a smell. If I spray outside, obviously. But if I brush it, I don't mind brushing in the house. I don't think that has that much of a scent. But everybody is different about what they can tolerate. And in this case, I decided to just prop this and just use it in different locations. I might put a zigzag in case I want to hang it on a wall at some point, but here I am just using it in a couple of different locations so that you can get a feel for how that came out. Here it is in my kitchen. And then my favorite place for it actually ended up being in my pantry, where I have a couple of other similar feeling items, and I wanted something that would pick up some of the black that was in the numbers. So that is a very simple project, but I realized it's not easy to get a hold of a round piece of wood, although I was thinking afterwards, since I got those stools, that, a inexpensive way to get a round piece of wood would be to get a stool top, if you can find one for a couple bucks at a yard sale. Now, project number 4, I am using the other half of that very same spool, and this time I pulled out my IOD stamps instead of transfers. I decided I wanted to stamp on this, and there's 2 sides. You can see this one had, this is kind of like the back side of it, and here I am using, now this, I don't remember the name. It might be by Redesign, that I got these little floral and grass type stamps on Amazon maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I'm not really quite sure exactly where that I got them. But these are like a little bit of cat o' nine tails or long grass. And I'm starting put with that on the bottom just to give myself a base and to fill up some of this wood to make it look like a little bit of a scene here, because I wanted to use my IOD farm yard animal stamp here and use the chicken. I have this on my garden gate outside. I did a whole scene and it came out adorable, and I thought it would be fun to just do something with the chicken. I had been using the bunny recently for Easter, and I've used the lamb. So I thought, okay, I'll do something a little bit different here. And it's very farmhouse, and I just like the look. It's very rustic on this round piece of wood. And then I just took another IOD stamp. It's one of those, maybe Icy Paris. I don't think it's the marmalade one. I think it's the Icy Paris one. I almost put it upside down. Whenever you have words, you got to make sure you're paying close attention here. And then just put that at the top. Now, it already had some words stamped on the other side that came naturally with the spool, so I just left that as it was. And then, again, took the polyacrylic and gave that a coat of polyacrylic. Tricky part, getting the brush down into those holes. Now, once that was dry, I decided to put some feet on this one and make it a riser. And I like to use these corks because I had found, probably 150 corks at our dump in phenomenal shape. Somebody had been probably intending to use them for crafts and never did. So I've been using them quite a bit lately for little riser feet. So, and they work really well. I just found 4 that were kind of a matching color. And then I decided to give the edges of this a little bit of the dark antiquing wax as well. I could have done it before the polyacrylic or after the polyacrylic. It doesn't really matter, because I think in the end I end up putting another coat of poly on top of it because it didn't have quite enough to drink into that dry wood. And I think this just really tops it off. Yeah, I did. I ended up giving it a second coat. I couldn't remember for sure. Of course, now I'm getting antiquing wax into my polyacrylic. So, I should have poured it off into a little container. I try to keep those little yogurt cups and little things that I, instead of recycling them in my trash, and reusing them. And here it is with those precious little chickies that I got at not Home Goods. I got them at Hobby Lobby last Easter for 75% off. I think I paid $2 for that little metal wire cage with those 3 chickies. And if I could, I'd buy 5 more of them. I have had so many people who have asked me where I've gotten them, and I wish that they had more because they are just so stinking cute. So I just put out some eggs and, just tried to dress that up a little bit. And then the strawberries from last week, one of last week's videos, give you a little pop of something that would go on the kitchen counter here. So I thought that came out really sweet. You'll have to let me know what you think of that. And then that takes me on to project number 5. This might be my favorite. I got this, I forgot to show you at the beginning, but I got this at the dump as well this week, and it was just a simple picture frame. And I just cleaned the glass real good. It didn't have any artwork in it. It didn't have a back on it. The glass was just held in there with some little nails, and that was fine by me. I took some cranberry-ish color and a little bit of pink. I mixed them together to get just the right color to you can see the transfer to my right. It has a touch of a reddish pink in it. I wanted to get a similar tone, but I also wanted it to be kind of like a whitewash, or, not really dark paint. So then after that, I just took a paper towel and wiped back some of that. And then I took this IOD transfer that I have had left over from a couple of projects ago. And the nice thing about transferring on glass is you have to be careful. You definitely want to make sure you don't break your glass, but it is pretty easy usually to get that to stick onto glass. I know, seriously, with the hair. Now, this red, as well as the brown edging on this frame, was a little darker than I wanted, and I wanted it to go a little bit better with how the transfer had that almost muted tone. So here I am taking some white antiquing wax, and I am almost out of white antiquing wax. I've got to, note to self, put that on a list and make sure I get some more. And then I like the Rust-Oleum White Wax. I know there's a million different ones out there, and everybody talks about all. It's $12, and it lasts a long time, and it goes on nice and creamy. It's not liquidy. I like the creamy of it all, and I don't like spending $25 for half a cup. So that's kind of why I prefer that one. Now, this is the back. And I decided here that I wanted to take my white chalk paint and paint the back to make that transfer pop really well. You could do this first, but then you run the risk of scratching your chalk paint. So I prefer to do it after. Plus, I do not like to see the brush marks, because you could certainly have painted the front of the glass and transferred right on the paint. But if you like the brush mark look, that's the way to do it. If you don't, then I would say paint the back of the glass. And so I went one way, and then once that chalk paint dried, I went down the other way just to make sure that that is good and covered. And then once that is completely dry, since I had the polyacrylic out, I just went ahead and put that on the back of the chalk paint so that it won't chip, or if it does happen to bump into something, it won't scratch off as chalk paint can do. Now, I could have waxed this with a white wax as well, but as I said, I'm running out of my wax. But I actually like the polyacrylic over it in some cases like this, so that it will, like a tray, if you're going to put something moist on it or whatever, it works really well to polyacrylic over the chalk paint. And that was all there was to it. Once that is fully dry, I absolutely love the way that this came out. I think that it is my favorite project. Surprisingly, I did not think that it would be, but I really, really, really love the way that the white paint behind the glass makes this whole transfer pop and look so pretty. And then I am going to throw in a bonus here because I forgot that I had done this. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a bonus at the end here, and you'll just have to let me know which one of these things is your favorite. So for this bonus, I had, as I showed you, found this little horse clock. I just cleaned that up, but it was an inspiration for something else. So taking that and using it as my color tone, I had this piece of old board that I had used for a different project, and I just cleaned off the chalk paint that was on it. I didn't love what I had done earlier, and I decided to just take that same muslin wrap and go ahead and dry brush with a chippy brush over that piece of wood, just to give myself a nice creamy colored background with a little bit of that brown still showing through. And the reason why I thought of this when I saw the horse was because a couple of years ago I had purchased a stencil off of Amazon for a bench that I had done for someone else. And I hadn't used that for quite some time and decided that I would pull that stencil out and use it on this piece of wood. So chalked paint in black, and I'm not black, Java. It is in a brown tone because I am again looking at that horse. I don't have quite the exact colors here for the clock that I am looking at, but at least I know that the two will go somewhat together. Now I wanted to just use this stencil brush. There's places on this stencil that are lifting up a little bit, so like the M and W, places like that, where there's a little excess. You have to be really careful on some of these really thin stencils that they can lift up. You can pounce with a sponge brush and you might have less bleed through. I am just kind of swirling a little bit over this stencil with that Java brown color and then trying to mix some tan tones in as well in a couple of places, and then trying to blend the two on the horse to make it look a little bit more 3D, a little bit more interesting. Here I am mixing a lighter color, the muslin wrap color, with a little bit of that darker Java brown to come up with a tan color so that I can do just the little accents, the date, a few other things on the stencil in a different color to give that a little bit more interest. Going over the horse a couple of times, and every now and again I will lift that just to make sure that I'm not getting a terrible amount of bleed through. There's no hope for it with this stencil. It's really thin. I knew I was going to get a little bit of bleed through. And if you do, if you're like me and you don't mind the rustic look, then once the whole thing is dry, you can certainly sand it. Then I oftentimes will just take a little paintbrush and, paint over what I absolutely have to, like the M got a little bit messed up. And then once I touch that up a little bit, I like to just blot it a little bit to make it match a little bit more with the background. And then once this is dry, I did go ahead and sand it slightly to bring out some of that character. And here is how that bonus came out. I think it looks so beautiful against my barn door in my kitchen, and it looks sweet with that little horse and that clock that we got from the dump. So I thank you for stopping by. I will see you in the next one. And make sure that you share this video with somebody that you think might like to see it. It certainly helps my channel to grow if you remember to occasionally drop a comment or hit the like button, or especially if you will share with somebody else. I appreciate that, and I will talk to you soon.